Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Hasan, it's awesome.
Thank you. Tan France. Yeah.
We're gonna get to Tan too. We gotta
Yeah,
talk.
all right, we're gonna do it.
It's funny, I met you a year ago.
Yeah.
And back then you were saying, you were kind of cryptic. You were like, I'm working on this thing. And that's all you said. You're like,
Right.
I learned just today that was actually, you were doing a sort of proof of concept video for this. So I just love, just off the bat, to know how it was to like come up with this idea, this fresh take, kind of a whole new medium. How did you kind of build it from before then until now?
Yeah, so what he was referring to is a year ago, were we doing an interview for Homecoming King?
We were doing an interview like right after Homecoming.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it had just come out on Netflix, and we were sort of talking about, hey, what are you working on? Is there something else that you're thinking about? And I did tell you about this thing, but one of the things that had really connected with a lot of people was the visual storytelling aspect of Homecoming King, using multimedia to show emails or evidence or established tone, just emotional tone of a scene. And it translated. People really dug it. And I had sort of hit this point at The Daily Show where, The Daily Show very much is, you're Scottie Pippen to Michael Jordan. Like John is, Mike, and you're Scottie, or Trevor, it's his show, and then you support Trevor. But it was one of those things where I said, if I had sort of the wingspan to have my own thing, what would I want to do? And I was putting together the next one-man show, and it was all these stories of sort of different political topics that I had covered in the field. And then I was talking to Prashant, the co-creator of Patriot Act, and he goes, no, that's a TV show. Yeah. Each act of this it's not a one-man show, it's like a proper television show. And coming out of that and the correspondence dinner, we were getting a lot of interest of, hey, what do you want to work on next? And I knew that Patriot Act was going to have a very distinct visual language. And I wanted to produce something that could show the networks, hey, this is what it looks like and this is what it feels like. Because, you snap your fingers before you know it, you're behind a desk and it's like, oh, it's Indian John Oliver. Like, it's the same thing all over again. So I didn't want that, like the fake skitty skyline, and I'm just looking at camera one. I didn't want that. I knew there was a very specific language that I wanted to create. And you have to see it, And so that was sort of that secret, project that I was working on at the time.
It's interesting you mentioned like Homecoming King. In some ways, Patriot Act does have this very distinct visual language, as you say, but it is also, in another sense, kind of an extension of what you were already doing with Homecoming King. It's like it's really a study in voice, which I'm really interested in across all of the arts. It seems like you've sort of honed from the correspondence dinner routine from Homecoming King. It's like finding your voice on stage and how you relate to people through the camera. How has it been to kind of find what that is and then use it in this very specific way?
Yeah, I wanted to pick topics where you can clearly tell from the jump, I genuinely really care about this topic. If I'm going to take 20 to 25 minutes of your time, it should matter. I should be adding value to your life in some capacity. It shouldn't just be something that you can get anywhere else. That's the first thing, just from a personal storytelling aspect of what is my anchor to the story. And then the second part that I really wanted to explore in Patriot Act was sort of this graduation from Homecoming King of like, okay, sure, I can mine my personal life for a lot of stuff, but can I apply that storytelling skill set to things that are maybe ancillary or 1 or 2 or 3 degrees removed from me? Mm-hmm. And can I still find connective tissue there? Yeah.
In terms of choosing the topics, right? Things that you care about. But I wonder also kind of what you want or what you imagine your relationship to the audience to be with respect to these topics. Is it like, I want to tell you about something that's maybe not the big clickbait topic, it's like a step removed? Or is it, here's a thing that I know that you know, because I know that you're an engaged kind of person in the world, that's why you're watching this, and I just want to go a layer deeper on it? Like, what is it? What do you want to bring to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, because we're on Netflix, one of the things that was really important for me is it has to feel timely and timeless. there has to be something that there's a spark of, oh, this is happening right now. So with affirmative action, it's in federal court right now, but there was this Babe Ruth element when we were putting it together of, this is going to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court loves affirmative action cases.
Yeah.
And so for me, I wanted to put something out where, hey, you can revisit this in 18 months, because best believe when it goes to the Supreme Court, Trump is going to bang that drum.
Yeah.
And I wanted to put it sort of on the record to very distinctly talk about my community and the way we're approaching this subject.
Yeah.
And that's another really important thing for me, is if I'm going to be a part of this landscape, I really wanted to look at the white space that exists in the medium, these sort of topics that are kind of radioactive for a lot of other hosts to touch.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about this, like, how do other hosts engage with affirmative action?
Right.
It's just too radioactive for them. And when I saw the Asian students suing Harvard, I'm like, all right, we are right in this wedge issue.
Right.
So let me talk about it. And I can entertain and talk to both sides, which I think is special or unique. Or with Saudi Arabia, the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm both an American and a Muslim. Okay, this is a weird clusterfuck.
Yeah.
It really is. It's such a weird relationship that we go to sword prom with Saudi Arabia, and for me, I'm like, how do I engage with this?
I'm sure that many of you have seen that Saudi Arabia episode, but it's like, I think it's really the kind of prime example of some of this stuff, because it's all of the research that this show takes, all of the deep thinking that it takes to bring this to the screen, but then also like your personal story, which is always kind of the subtext of the show, but now it's foregrounded.
Yeah.
Like, this is why this matters to me. Like, I guess I wonder whether you feel some risk in that in certain points. Even in this episode, the affirmative action episode, you're kind of challenging this figure that you say, like the aunties, the uncles.
Yes.
Like, you're kind of getting into your own community.
Yeah, there's this element of let's be real.
Yeah.
Are you really Asian MLK, or is this about your son getting Harvard? Like, that's the thing that I wanted to sort of put on the record.
Yeah. So does that, I wonder if that...
But by the way, there's moments where it's not that deep. Like with with our Amazon episode, the general take was, look, I'm addicted to Prime. Like, that's my addiction. and the take was, I'm lazier than I am woke.
Yeah.
When it comes to Prime.
Yes.
Like, convenience is the commodity that I guess matters the most. I've researched this, and there's the graphics and the whole thing, and I still use Prime to get diapers for my daughter. Like, it's one of those things, and I just wanted to be honest about it and let that be the undercurrent.
Yeah, and it seems maybe that's like also the way you earn your criticism of others, to also put some criticism on yourself.
Oh yeah, right? There's like I'll dunk on myself. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But do you I found myself wondering, like, what your parents think of the show, or like, is it like, oh, you're like too close to the bone here? Like, is there a worry that you have of like the older generation not understanding or receiving it in the way, with the love that you intended? Yeah,
their concerns are more about safety, because they know with specific things like the Saudi Arabia episode, you're poking the bear. And my mom and dad are very much like, hey, there's a lot of stuff that you make fun of in America, and knock on wood, we're relatively safe here. But autocrats and dictators don't like getting made fun of.
Yeah.
By their own.
Yeah.
And that's their concern of like, do you want to keep poking the bear? Because there are repercussions to that.
Yeah.
And that's something where I just had to sort of come to terms with, specifically in regards to Saudi Arabia, making pilgrimage, all that stuff. And I've had to come to personal terms with certain things in regards to that.
Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of something in Homecoming. Can you talk about a sort of mismatch in expectations between you and your dad specifically?
Yes.
Like, you have these, I don't know if entitlements are the word, but like
optimism. I say it's optimism versus pragmatism.
Right.
And I think like I talk about that, the pendulum swings between the two.
Yeah.
And I get it now, especially as a parent too. Like, there's moments where I'm extremely just pragmatic, and I'm like, the world's not changing, so this is what we have to do. And then moments
get on a rocket ship and go.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
But that optimism is also like, you see it in other places in the show where, like, I love you have a riff maybe in the next episode where you talk about the lota. It's like, it's like.
Yeah. That's for the culture moment. Yeah.
But I feel that to me like talks about a kind of confidence to say, I'm going to talk about this very specific, you can explain for everybody what the lota is.
Yeah, a lota is basically like the manual transmission of bidets.
Yeah. But like, to make such a specific reference that speaks to your community and not worry that you're going to lose an audience. It seems to me that there's a confidence, like, no, like, now we're
in the
on the way.
But don't you feel like that with art you consumed as a kid? You may or may have not been in that community, but the art that I loved made me feel like I was in the room.
Right.
And it also didn't disrespect my level of intelligence.
Yeah.
It was like, no, I will speak to you as if you're me or a friend, and you'll get it. And I think that's actually respecting the audience the most.
Yeah, I always felt that way about Black culture, that it was distinct, but it was welcoming, and that was why it became just American culture, right?
Yes.
Like, and I see that with you, where you're just like, it was funny, like, we can talk about Tan now, and that Netflix, like, the little thing of you guys. Yeah. There was a moment there that was really deep, though. He was talking to you about, like, you know, you can, like, use more Western hair products if you want. And you said, no, like, let me school you real quick. Like, everybody's trying to be like us, from, like, chai to this and that. Like, this kind of acknowledgement that the gravity of, the cultural gravity, I guess you could call it, is, like, headed in your direction.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2042, baby. You know what I mean? There's that, like, come on, man, why do we have to half-step now?
Yeah.
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 Also, I mean, like, to me, interesting art are the anomalies. Like, my favorite authors or musicians sort of they're exceptional because they're unlike the rest. They make clear creative choices to be like, no. Like, I'm making a distinct choice to do a Lota joke and a Call Me By Your Name Italian peach joke in the same episode.
Yes.
Like, that's a choice, you know?
Yeah.
And I certainly hope that people see that that's, he's doing it all, and he's not compromising who he is or what he's about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that also, I mean, it kind of connects to this kind of, what I think is really interesting about your show is that, like, 10, 15 years ago, when maybe, I guess, The Daily Show is, of course, like, the sort of first of a kind of model. Yeah. The mantra of comedians who did shows that were premised on the news was, it's just comedy. Right. Right? Like, this is a parody of Fox News or MSNBC, and if you're taking this too seriously, you're doing it wrong. Whereas I think that you're, like, kind of up to something different. These are issues that you want to talk about. Yes, you're making jokes. Yes. But there's an earnestness, right? Like a seriousness of intent. With you. I mean, was that something that you always knew you wanted to do? Well,
I would say this. I would say that in regards to sort of that commentary, that I think John really sort of pioneered of, hey, like, I'm on Comedy Central. The show before me is a show with puppets that prank call people. So this isn't journalism. I think I forgot about Crossfire. He said that on Crossfire. He's like, you're telling me I'm a journalist, but, like, I have crank calling puppets before my show. Like, it's not news. But I do feel like that software needs to be updated, because especially right now, a lot of people do get their news from these shows. We're able to distill a lot of insanity into this, like, very distinct comedy news espresso, which people actually do take as truth. But the interesting thing that's happening right now is some of these shows are now breaking proper news. Like, in the Saudi Arabia episode, we had the CENTCOM document that it was just there. It was out there, like the fact that the US military had this document that was really, really offensive in terms of the language that was right in chapter 1. It described, you know, the people of Saudi Arabia as having Negro blood and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, how is this PDF just living on the internet? And it's given to every military official that goes to Saudi Arabia. And then the US military ended up apologizing in taking that down, right? Yeah. That's breaking news. That's, in journalism, that would be breaking news. But the thing that I try to tell people is, for my job, the necessary condition is comedy. The sufficient condition is this news? Is this interesting? So people come up to me all the time and they're just like, hey man, you're the melanin savior. You need to talk about Rohingya. And I'm like, I can't make that funny. Dude, you have to talk about it. And I'm like, I can't make that funny yet. Yeah. That's why real journalism matters, because the necessary condition is news. The sufficient condition is it interesting? The problem is I think cable news and a lot of certain sort of clickbaity media the necessary condition is it salacious? Yeah. Will people want to click on it? Then are we providing information or context?
Yeah. I mean,
so the whole game's been sort of flipped on its head now, which is weird.
Yeah. And back to just your choice of topics, it does seem to be an argument against perhaps the loudest, the most, because there's a version of this show that's just about like what Trump said today, right? Like, I mean, and that's a lot of
a lot of the daily stuff is in that vein, yes. To try to just, it's a lot of recap stuff. Hey, this happened. Did you see that gaffe? Did you see that senator say that dumb thing? Play the tape, and then just, milk, tag, joke, good night.
Yeah.
And it's really in the recap sort of business. And I think there's been this new space that's been created. I took a lot of inspiration from storytelling and podcasting, or longer form journalism, like what you guys were doing, like what you guys are currently doing. And what I love about that is the shelf life of that stuff. You can walk away from some of those articles or those podcasts feeling like it wasn't just like sugar, where you could laugh at a gaffe and then you're done, and you sort of like, well, what's the bigger takeaway? Yeah.
On a technical level, then, because you're choosing a different kind of news, right? Because your sufficient condition is different than maybe that for a different show. Like, does that change the kind of joke you do? Like the necessary part of your job? Like, is there a kind of different approach even to structure in how you make comedy if it's something that you also, like you say, want to live for longer, to be evergreen? How does that work? Like, what kind of jokes are you wanting to get from the writer's room that are like kind of help make concrete that longer shelf life?
My bigger thing is what larger question are we answering? So to me, like, the affirmative action headline piece, people around the world can see it. And different countries have different forms of affirmative. It's not called affirmative action, it's called different things. And to me, it's, hey, is there a larger question we're answering here? And that episode to me is a discussion of meritocracy. Who gets what and why? The Saudi Arabia episode is, if we know about this complicated relationship, why aren't we reassessing it? Why did it take this very public and brutal murder for us to finally sort of talk about this really weird, thing that's existed since FDR? That to me is where, for me as a comedian, really interesting comedy lives in that space.
So doing this show, I know that you just kind of finished also being on tour for your, I guess it's a second special or more material? Or?
Well, the tour that I did was almost like the mixtape to Patriot Act, which is the studio album. It was a bunch of headlines that we had been working on that aren't in the show currently. But that became sort of the genesis of what you see.
So what is then?
If I was Lil Wayne, it was the Drought mixtapes. Which then became the Carter.
Which made him the greatest rapper.
How else do I don't know. That's the best analogy I can think of.
It's a good one.
All right. Well, 92nd Street Y. Mixtapes and rap albums. Right. Comedy's fun, right?
But does...
By the way, Vincent, I just love the pockets of 8 people laughing. It's the best.
You can. It's like one of those tectonic maps where the hot spots. The people, those people. What?
It's kind of how on Netflix it's just you like murder documentaries and you also like cooking shows. It's that. You like the Lil Wayne, the Drought, right? But you also like talking about meritocracy and affirmative action. Patriot Act.
Does this change how you think about live performance though? Like to the extent that you do another special, quasi-special, in whatever way that looks, does this kind of further, because you were already not doing
traditional
stand-up, like with a sort of brick wall behind you. But does this further complicate how you think about stand-up?
Yes, I'm really interested in seeing how far we can continue to take the medium of sort of storytelling and comedy. And I'll be 100% honest, I think a lot of what the comics are doing in Edinburgh and Europe is really interesting versus what a lot of comics are doing in America. I've taken a ton of inspiration from what they do. In Europe, there's comics that will turn around a whole new show every year.
Yeah.
It's sort of it is their mission statement to, I turn around a brand new hour every year, and it's a show centered around a specific theme, and that's my big presentation to the world. I think that's really cool and interesting. So as I continue to explore that, that's something that I take a lot of inspiration from.
Yeah. You mentioned the sort of, what do you say, melanin savior thing?
Oh, right.
Melanin messiah thing?
Oh, right.
It's true though, because like, you'll look at one of your tweets and you'll go down, and it's very heartwarming. Or like your Instagram or something, people will be like, I've never seen someone talk about this that's very personal to me, and now it's being represented on this stage. Does that turn into like, what does that mean for you? Is that like a responsibility? Is it just nice, but you just have to do what it is that interests you? How does that sort of manifest in your like thought life in terms of how you do your work? Are you like, now I really can't let XYZ people down?
I mean, there is definitely pressure. The pressure that I feel is that I just don't want to mess up. I don't want to let. I just don't want to let, you know, people who support what I'm about and the movement that we're trying to create. I don't want to let them down. So I do my due diligence to make sure we're airtight in terms of our argumentation, in terms of the jokes. I really do the best that I can with my writers and my sort of staff. And it's really diverse to go, hey, what do you think of this take? Or what do you think of that? Like, you know, to really sort of just cross your T's and dot your I's. But also at the same time, what excites me the most is I remember as a kid, like seeing the Arsenio Hall show. And I remember they would have these great shots where the camera would turn and it would be the studio audience.
Yeah.
And I just remember viscerally, you can even watch the clips on YouTube now, being like, oh, this is different. Like, I've never seen this before in my life.
Yeah.
And
no one had seen this.
No one had seen this. But just like even the audience reactions and to be in the same era as Johnny Carson, and when you cut to that audience shot, you see Malcolm X baseball caps. It's a very different studio audience than what was going on also in Burbank at that time too. Yeah. And to me, that was like, it's really powerful to me. On our camera 4, you can see shots of people in the studio audience, like wearing a Black Lives Matter hoodie next to a girl in hijab, next to, you know what I mean? It's really cool. That to me is really cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't know, it like gives me energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. How does that work? I've always wondered that. You're just coming from a rehearsal?
Right.
How does that work? So you do a couple shows in front of the same audience, and then you think of more material, and then you do a couple more in front of the same audience?
I mean, the cool thing that we've done with Patriot Act is, because there's this sort of threading of the story, I'll do these secret shows in New York. There'll be these like pop-up shows at the Fat Black Pussycat, which is in the Village, and it's just it's like me and like a TV screen and just a PowerPoint. Me and Jamie, my stage manager from Homecoming Gang, and it'll be the PowerPoint version of what the show will be, and it'll just be a drop-in show, and people will think, oh, I'm gonna go see Hasan do stand-up, and then I'm just like, affirmative action as we know it is about to die, and they're like, what is going on?
He's so urgent.
Yeah. And then like I do the headline, and then the writers are there with me, and then I'm like, thank you so much, good night. And they're like, what? But it gives me like feedback. Like I know where I'm watching people in real time sort of understand or shake their heads or not understand something. And then we take notes, and then we transition that into then what goes into the sort of big stage show that you see, which is this like shiny Ferrari. Okay, we need this for clarity. We need this for this is a cool fireworks moment. Like the Abigail Fisher scene that you guys saw, that was something that we had rehearsed a bunch of times in pop-up shows. And the different iterations that we had created for that, it wasn't translating, and we had to continue going back to the drawing board to be like, how do we elucidate this?
Yeah.
And then what you finally see coming out of rehearsal, which is on our set, to then what's taped in front of a live studio audience, is this sort of refined, honed thing.
Yeah.
Which to me, it just I think it plays to my strengths as a storyteller.
Yeah. And how do you know, like, through that it's working? You had a really another video that you had about your your hand motions. Like
yeah.
I've got the same problem. My wife tonight we have a game of like, am I going to do weird things with my hands? And I think I'm winning, but I don't know. But so what's your approach to like watching yourself? Like, how do you know when like I'm hitting, like this is what it is? Like, I'm doing a good job here.
I mean, comedy is one of like, they'll let you know. Like when I did that Lil Wayne joke, I knew how well it did. You guys let me know. So, as a child of immigrants, I'm very used to getting dunked on and slapped around, so I can take it. Yeah, nothing you tell me is any worse than what I've heard growing up. So, yeah, you figure it out fast. The thing that's more important to me is the take. And there's these very visceral moments when if you make a really good point, you can just hear it in the room. Like, you can hear those gasps, or you can hear the nods, or like you can hear people sort of understanding. That to me is the stuff that's really important to me. And then layering on jokes afterwards, or I think that's a little bit easier, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me because again, with comedy, all you hear when you hear people talk about comedy, it's like, I'm looking for the laugh, and you're like trying to press many different buttons, right?
Yeah.
You don't hear lots of comics talk about the sort of the gasp button or like.
Yeah. Well, but don't you feel like when you wake up and you open up Twitter, it's just jokes are there. They're available for free 99. Just start scrolling.
Yeah.
And you'll see a lot of jokes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of,
There's also just a lot of like hellish.
In craziness.
Opinions and.
But like, whenever you see like a great take, you respond to it. It's very powerful,
Yeah.
And some of the comedians that have inspired me are able to distill it. And I've witnessed it with my own eyes. When Trevor has been in the pocket or John has been in the pocket, I've seen them. I'm like, that act one, it was your take that took it out of the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, actually, everybody, we're going to have a cool surprise. We're going to get some of your collaborators out here. We're going to have your showrunner,
Jim Margolis,
and your
co-creator and head writer. Yeah.
So I would love to have them come out and. And they'll introduce themselves. Yeah. Guys, please introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Jim Margolis. I'm the showrunner.
I'm Prashant Venkataramanajam, that crazy name you guys see after the credits, that you're like, what was that?
You didn't even say it. I noticed you mentioned his name.
Yeah, well,
and you were like, do I go in for the Latin? No, I can't do it.
Yeah, because the thing is, I was like, I'm gonna let Prashant do it, because if I ever trip up on it, I'm like, I gotta clear the runway.
You're gonna get roasted by the brown internet.
Yeah.
I went straight
The
for job
South
titles.
Indians are gonna be like, how could you do us dirty like that? And I'm like,
But since we're kind of on the talking a little bit about just how the show is made, I'd love if you guys could talk a little bit about just go a little bit deeper on how how from idea to execution, like what does the writer's room look like? Who is coming up with these ideas, and how you've made the joke that it's like a kind of comedy TED Talk. But to me, it also kind of seems like a funny New Yorker article, like from where I'm from. You know what I mean? Like there's an obvious, it's the product of a journalistic process. I just love to hear about how that all comes off.
Often it's borrowed from the New Yorker. That's
some of the Khashoggi stuff was taken from the New Yorker.
Yeah, and there was a nice parallel where your affirmative action piece came out like a little bit after one of my friends, Wasu, did a great affirmative action piece in the New Yorker. So there's like finding the different things in that, but
and in fact we have it's a very thorough kind of legal vetting process. So we have a lawyer who, once we like the show, is once they get a script, and usually he's questioning all the sources. But in the Saudi Arabia episode, he's like, "Oh, this is from the New Yorker. This is great. We don't have to worry about this." And everything else, he's like, "Can you get more than 6 sources on this?"
And I'm like, "How is BuzzFeed not enough?" And he's like, "It's not." And I'm like, "Whatever, dude. It's been shared 3,000 times on Facebook."
That means it's true.
Yeah. But I think it usually starts with either one or two things. There's sometimes a news pitch, or it's coming from like a storytelling element of like, I really want to talk about this, but we will have like sort of like a news pitch meeting, and a lot of stuff will run through Jim, and Jim will sort of determine, all right, are we presenting something new or interesting that hasn't been said before?
But the staff is different. It's not like, I think when people think of writers' rooms, they think of 30 Rock, and it's not like, it's not like that. We actually have a physical writers' room, but rarely is it a bunch of people in there. Most things are done in smaller groups, and I think more importantly, we have a whole staff that's journalists. I mean, there's comedy writers. There are
Proper journalists.
8 comedy writers, and then this amazing staff of journalists and people who are what we call footage producers, but they too are journalists. So
they find the AJ Catharis. All that.
Yeah, they find the thing of like, no one has seen this. And that usually is a big thing. Like me, Jim, and Prashant, if there's that sort of holy shit, how did I not know this moment? Then you have to we generally try to press play on that.
Right.
But I guess the very short version of the process is a story gets pitched by anybody. We encourage everyone to pitch, from the news team to the writers to everybody else who works on the show, graphics people, et cetera. And then when we decide something seems worth looking into, the news team looks into, starts developing it, and they create what we call a book, which is kind of like a dossier. And then we go through that dossier, and then writers get involved, and they write outlines based on the dossier, and then scripts, and then we keep rewriting, and Prashant basically never leaves the office, which is not an exaggeration.
Except I am here right now.
Yeah. Right.
They let me out.
Tonight, this is the office.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so that's, you can.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, because the graphics element is, so ostentatious, we kind of start flagging some of these early moments of clarity or joke runs that we go, oh, this would be a really funny thing to do, and we want to do a big graphics joke on it. So we try to get that to our graphics department early and go, hey, mock this up, let's take a look, let's see if it plays. And we do the same with, like he said, the Abigail Fisher run, where we'll go, this is a really important thing that we think makes our case stronger or makes the argument stronger, and we think elucidating this in a very interesting way is going to be beneficial to our audience. I think the other thing that, just from a mechanical standpoint, that we learned along the way is just how these stories need to be backed up every step of the way. Because sometimes, you'll go, oh, how come, he said, Rohingya, why isn't he just talking about that? Or, oh, I'd love for him to talk about the wealth gap or something esoteric. But when you often do these meditations on things, they just don't translate, because then you're just watching someone learn or pontificate. You know what I mean? You're not watching someone present something. So that was
or how do you rein in the story? We have there was this thing, when we first got the writer's room going, there was a couple times people pitched, you got to talk about climate change. And it's this huge, topic. Yeah. And the thing was, me and Jim and Prashant were both look, we recognize this is a thing to talk about, but it wasn't until the oil episode, the Taylor oil spill, was a thing that sort of reined it in.
There was one writer who was making us feel like climate change deniers, because we're well, we're not, it's just not funny. What are we going to do? And so we finally.
Well, I guess that's cool if you don't care about the planet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And
so it's not funny, all of our deaths. Yeah.
And it's how do we open the show? And it's look, if the Earth warms up 2 degrees, we're definitely going to die. 3 degrees? Oh, we're gonna die even faster. That's how we open the show.
So turn off this show right now.
Yeah, that was
Something that I've thought about watching this, I've never really had this awareness with anything else that I've watched on Netflix, is that everything else we watch on TV, especially in this kind of space, the talk show, late night space, you think of in an American context. But often when I'm watching this show, I'm thinking, oh wait, Netflix is in, I don't even, how many countries is it?
190.
190 countries. So does the does the international nature of this, of the platform, change the way you think about writing and producing and creating the show?
I mean, there's certainly stories that I feel like we can talk about because, we don't necessarily have to anchor it to what's happening in America this week, which is very liberating.
Yeah.
But then there's also parts where it's like, hey, I am an American, and letting my identity as an American sort of be the anchor and then speak out to something. It's a case-by-case sort of situation.
Yeah.
It is also tricky because so much of the way the show is produced relies on footage, right? And that helps, with exposition or something funny happens, and as certain countries, they don't, getting access to news there and getting access to footage to help tell the story sometimes can be very tricky and difficult. And so we just have, all these people scouring YouTube sometimes to just get us, stuff because it just can't be him, talking the whole time with these it needs to be grounded in reality and a trusted source for it to actually have, gravity.
And often we'll find footage and then we're not allowed to use it, and that becomes that just happened this week, and you'll find footage and you'll have this great joke run, and then we'll hear, oh, you can't use it.
They're not going to license it to you, and you hit these very real walls. I mean, there's stories that die. I mean, you've experienced the same thing in writing where a source didn't come through or whatever. Yeah.
Sure. It's the worst.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just gotta move on. Yeah. Does the process of creating this change, as creators of, I guess the sort of awful technocratic word is like content, but as creators of television for entertainment, does this change? Now I'm asking you to do the thing that you don't want to do on your show, just sort of like pontificate. But does it change the way you think about the future of this kind of thing? Because there's not going to be too many ex-John Olivers, right? Just like you say, that's just like.
This is a good question for Jim because he's seen it from, he's been at the Daily Show for so many years and he's seen these iterations.
I don't know.
Will there always be the guy with the band?
I feel like there always is that guy, but I feel like when I started working on the show, I truly didn't understand the visual element of the show, and it's really, it's insane what goes into it every week. So
it's good to hear, Jim.
I would be surprised because I was thinking about this. I was thinking
Jim
are people going to see this and then
about not understanding the visual process?
Yeah, no, I'm not on social media. I don't I am very much an outsider.
Jim's I'm here to figure out what the show is.
But I would be shocked if this isn't the most copyable format, at least visually. Obviously, Last Week Tonight. And from that, the Daily Show, if you watched the summer where John Oliver took over for John, you could see that he was doing something different, and that's what led to what he did. So, I think it all kind of evolves into the next thing.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I'll add, and one thing, when it was just me, Jim, and Hasan just in a bombed out office, these shows, even though they seem, a lot of them look the same or they're covering the same topics, they really do need to fit the host of the show. And that's a really important thing. This show is wrapped around Hasan's perspective, how he performs, even the hand gestures, everyone's just the hater YouTube comments are oh, they got rid of the desk, so what? But it is a big thing to let.
It's a valid question.
YouTube comments are the best.
But it's
dark place.
But it is really important. It actually is, because giving him the ability to walk the stage, use his hands for emphasis, all these things really play up the performance and let him sort of sing the song, and that really does make it distinct.
Yeah.
And we also had this thing where we were trying to figure out, we spent basically the summer trying to figure out what the show is. And it's true. And there was a lot of, we were okay, we're gonna, and we had all these conversations with the network, who, by the way, would keep using Chelsea Lately as a reference because that was the other show they've done like this. Right. And we kept thinking, what do they think this is? But we went into it thinking, okay, we're gonna start at the top of show with something topical from that week, and then we're gonna transition into something longer, and then we found out that it would basically, like, the turnaround time from when we tape to when it can be on Netflix was much longer than we thought. So
Right.
things would be stale.
Yeah.
And then we realized, and these guys spent a lot of time just kind of obsessively studying Netflix and how people consume it, and they came to the conclusion, whatever our main story is,
Just get to that.
just do it.
Like, give them the stake. Like, I just am imagining people at home, on the train, like, whatever. Like, I was like, close your eyes, imagine it. Boom, boom. And then we're into it. And then if I'm just like, hey, did you hear what Kellyanne Conway said this week? And then everyone's like, what? If you're watching it 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, like, all of a sudden, you're, because Netflix is not bound by time. It's actually timeless. People go to Netflix to escape time or forget about time. And I was like, then these things need to be both timely and timeless. There has to be an urgency to it, but it also has to be one of those things where, okay, I can watch this 2 weeks from now when my friend tells me, you gotta see his Amazon thing or their thing on this,
And then we did it, and we started hearing from people. Our first episode, which was the one tonight, and no one was saying, you know what I'd like is another story, is something, something about Trump, or, so we kind of, like, there was this process of trying to at least carve out what we thought the show should be that best suited both his voice and the material.
I mean, a big philosophical thing that I've talked about with them, I've turned to, like, Jim and Prashant and really had lengthy discussions with them.
They don't know what the show's about, so maybe
Yeah.
tell them again.
I mean,
So
right now,
I was like, number
Who
one.
are you people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
Say it again.
First things first, can I pitch you the show? but also it's this idea that, like, the term the variety show is built around this concept where you have to, networks have these late night shows to fill in swaths of time. You're filling in time to get to commercial break.
Right.
But Netflix it's on the internet. So everything on YouTube or on Netflix is the stake itself. Yeah. And so this was a real philosophical question I had with them. I was like, do you need to give people more extraneous stuff if you don't have to fill in time?
Yeah.
And to me, that what's happening right now through streaming is showing, I think, the death of variety. It's not variety. Do what you do.
Yeah.
The other thing too with what he's saying is, people feel when you're wasting their time. They can set.
right now,
Like,
for instance.
Can you please shut the fuck up?
This guy had his time wasted today.
Vincent, remember when you were like, how do you know if something's working?
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Like he was right on.
You're wasting
great.
my time now. Is what he said.
So
People know when you're
Uh-huh. I don't even know where to go from
Dude,
here.
we live like emperors now. If people are like, I watched 3 minutes of it, thumbs down. There's zero patience. I've told you, how many times have I told you this? I'm like, never underestimate how impatient people are.
Yes.
And how lazy people are.
Well, the funny thing
you
too
have
is
to feed
we
that.
were like, we need this research and we need these screens, and we were getting up to the premiere of the show, and then he does this thing with Tan France. It's like 3 million views. And we're like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this show?
Yeah. Like
This is the show.
after the tan thing, I remember I came into your guys' office and I was just like, being smart is dumb. It's so dumb. People are like, why don't you go shopping with Tan more? And I'm like, an hour of me putting on jackets was more
See,
entertaining.
but it's what they want.
Look.
Yeah.
That's
It's
our
like,
next,
I couldn't
that's our
even
next
hear
show.
you guys watching the thing of just like, vegetables. And then with Tan, it's just like, it's like keeping up with the Kardashians with Desi people, and everyone's like, give me more! I want more! Work is hard, life is hard, just give me things where I don't have to think.
Yeah.
It would be really funny if we pivoted and we had a show called Patriot Act that was just you getting dressed. Like,
Yeah, maybe.
like this aggressive U.S. policy.
It's funny, like, so your 32 episodes
Yeah.
were kind of, the way that I always saw it being publicized was like 32 episodes in the run up to the 2020 election.
Right.
It's like, and that's when it's like kind of, that was the sort of pace of that 32. So I guess my question is, your ability to be kind of about what you want to be about and not waste people's time on sort of hyper topical things, does that evaporate next July when, like, you know, Michael Avenatti's at the Iowa, you know.
I don't think he's going to be in Iowa after what happened this week.
Whoever, like, does the imperative to be more time-based when, like, I guess my question is more philosophical. As the world starts to accelerate, does that change your pacing, or do you feel the confidence to just do it at however you're doing it?
I mean, we've had conversations, especially when we're pitching stuff with Jim, is like, we try to see the iceberg coming. Oh, the Iowa caucuses are here. These are some of the big questions leading up into it. And we very much entertain what is the big thing that we're trying to talk about that would maybe suit that period of time? Or, oh, there's this big international election happening here around this time. Maybe we plan something around that.
Right.
Or we choose not to. And there's another larger thing that while everyone is talking about this thing, oh, you know, this thing's happening right now, and it's really, really important too. Like, it's cool to me that we did our Amazon headline piece 2 weeks before HQ2 got announced. And we had this big sort of decision. Are we going to include the thirst traps that cities were laying out? To be like, put HQ2 here, you know, that was a thing.
Yeah.
And then we wanted to peg it to something larger.
Yeah.
But that was also something that we saw. I mean, we took Amazon down to Fat Black, and we ran it, and we had the HQ2 thing in, and it was so clear that no one cared. I mean, it was because everyone knows it. I mean,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's been done to death.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the other challenges is we are in kind of a crowded marketplace, and we have to find things that hopefully other people haven't done, or certainly have not done exactly the way we're doing it.
I sometimes feel, don't you feel like with the runway time that we have, the fact that we don't ever have to throw to commercial, that to me is liberating, where I'm like, sure, somebody talked about that, but they could only cover it this much. But we could cover it this much because we can just keep going. you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
There's also like, our process dictates our content as well, because the screens and the technical limitations, it's like, we are not, and we're, you know, it's being figured out, but like, we're not as nimble because we're a new show.
We're not nimble at all. Yeah.
You got a very good taste of like what
Yeah.
the writing process is.
But it's true. I mean, we have to like kind of figure out the graphics the week before, and then we tape on a Wednesday, and then it's on Netflix on a Sunday. So
This is what they say about, like, the sonnet, right? That limits help to spark
Yeah.
creativity. I mean, it's like,
But the thing is that where we have certain limitations, we also get certain freedoms. Like, everyone's like, oh, we'd love to do the show this way, but all the other shows are also facing their own specific limitations that seem like they're freedoms, but they're constrained to them, you know? So there is like a give and take there.
But I do think the answer to your kind of Iowa caucus question is we don't really know, but I think what will happen is there will be elements of what's happening in the moment that he can speak to, and that he has something to say. And if that's the case, we will do it. We will do
Right.
a very topical show, or shows, or many shows, or whatever the case may be. But it is an interesting question, because I mean, who knows what it's gonna feel like when that happens and we are in that world.
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's time to take some questions from the audience, which have already, I guess, been, here they are. Thank you. Thank you
I
so
thought
much.
you were about to say trickling out.
This is you, yes. So I guess
I would love it if the first one was, when are you gonna do more with Tan France?
what's up with Tan, though? Like, what subject on the show surprised you the most while learning about it, researching and making the show? What was the thing that was like a aha for you?
What would you say, Prashant?
That's a really good question. I think one thing, this is an answer to an adjacent question.
He goes, I'm not going to answer
Yeah.
that.
Not
Here's
gonna
what I do
answer.
want to
But I think it's interesting because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I've
You want a
been,
whiteboard?
I love whiteboards. I wish I had one on my shirt so I could just. There's a. You get to when you do a show like this and you get to hang out with like these really smart people who understand journalism, you get a really cool peek behind the curtain of what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say.
That's awesome.
And it's really eye-opening.
Yeah.
Of
Like
just
PC
like
lessons.
Oh, it's great. There's certain things I've said, they're just like, you cannot say that. And I'm like, so-and-so is a war criminal. They're like, you can't say that.
yeah.
You're like, why? I should be able to say that because he is.
Yeah, I'll be like,
Yeah.
but he is.
And they're like, well, technically, he's an autocrat.
And I'm like,
And it's
Welcome to the New
that's
Yorker.
been fascinating because there's been articles we'll base research on, or stuff for the show, and then we'll dig deeper into the research they use to make the article, and we'll go, oh.
Can I say something? All right, in this week's episode, I make a very specific joke about Gandhi, and just know when you watch it, that had to be reined in. Okay?
By me.
I could hear them on the headsets. They're like, he cannot say that. We have to pick that up again. He cannot, because I just went off the rails a little bit, and we had to contain the beast.
But that's been a very interesting, and you obviously know about that. But when you look into it, you go, oh, we can't quite say that because this publication
Yeah, you
actually
can't go full
tilted
George
it in
Bush
this
doesn't
way.
care about black people. You
And
can't go.
And the other thing too is the internet is just savage. So like these people will fact check us on everything. There are people that screenshot our show and they circle our sources, and they're crazy. Like.
Are you serious? Is it
Yes,
like
yes.
at Patriot Act truthers?
Yeah, and like all the journals we cite, like people will pick up on them and they'll tag the people who authored the paper and they'll go, Patriot Act, use your research, and they'll like high five emoji. But I'm like, oh my God, they're like watching.
Yeah, but it's like if we're trying to obviously say some sort of real stuff that's in a controversial space, we tell them each other all the time, and Jim has always been like, we cannot be wrong on this show.
Yeah.
Because once you lose credibility, then it's downhill from there.
But I will say, to answer that, the thing that was interesting, or the story that was most interesting to me was.
Oh right. Right.
Every question you've lobbed, I just answer something else, and Jim's like, to answer your question.
Yeah. Well, but when
Now that all that, yeah.
when I started working with them in May, and one of the very first, he came in, and this was right after Mohammed bin Salman had come here, and been with Oprah, and
Done the whole thing.
did his whole dog and pony show, and Hasan came in, and he's like, I want to do something on this guy because I think he's bad, but everyone thinks he's good, and I don't know if I'm right. And let's figure that out. And then we spent all summer working on it, and then events kind of overtook us, and we did it. But it was really interesting. Like, that is not something that I would have ever considered from the point of view of a Muslim. And it was kind of really interesting to go down that road and to see that, and then to see what we had to deal with as the story kept changing.
Yeah. I like this question because there are times when you kind of like lightly roast other Netflix things. Today I was watching the oil one, and you're like about the bodyguard.
Right.
Everybody answer quickly. What is your favorite Netflix show aside from your own?
What is it? What is yours?
My favorite color is green. And, I mean, I'm a sucker for House of Cards. Like, they got me, or like don't make it weird. Come on.
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. I like Black Mirror.
I don't know I watched the first episode of Narcos last night and liked it quite a bit. So, there you go.
There you go.
Oh, and Dirty Money. That's one of my favorite shows on Netflix. Dirty Money is awesome.
Ask me what my favorite show that a Netflix executive once used in reference to our show.
I am asking you that.
Riverdale.
Fair enough. As storytellers, who do you take inspiration from? And that's really, like, so you talked a lot about, like, sort of the primacy of storytelling in this endeavor. Who tells stories in a way that sort of has inspired you to?
I love, and this came from Prashant, Radiolab. The way a host could be maestro to a field piece, the main story, come in and out of commentary on something. Like they're almost sort of DJ to all the elements of reporting. That to me was really cool. And I was like, if we could do a comedy version of that visually, it'd be amazing.
Awesome.
So that was a huge inspiration for me.
Similarly, I mean, like
Because my favorite movie is.
This is for both of us. I'm speaking on behalf of both. Like podcasts were a huge inspiration for the show because they are like, you know, there's no airtime. They just upload them, and it's another model where like, don't waste my time. Just tell us a really cool story in a really interesting way, and we will keep coming back to this.
He said something really cool. He goes, I listen to, who's your favorite guy, Jad?
Radiolab's more perfect.
Yeah. He goes, I listen to them because if they're putting it out, that means it's worth my time.
Right.
And I go, if we can get our show to that level where people are like, oh, he did a thing on that, that means it's worth my 20 minutes.
Right.
Because they took the time.
And you see that happening, I think, with streaming show. Like, that is how people, like really rabid fans of John Oliver feel. He'll do some show about something very obscure, but you will tune in because you go, they must have found something really interesting.
That I didn't know, yeah. That excites me. That's the thing that excites us. Like, this weekend's episode it's exciting to me. It has not been talked about, and it's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. This is going to be the last question. I really like this. And I'm asking it because my wife and I always talk about how, like, lit the music is to your show. How it's like, bah, da, da, like, and it's like, yeah. We're just like, sometimes we just wake up in our house and we're just like, bah.
Controversial area.
Yeah. So this question is related to that. First, I would love for you to tell me about how, like, that theme song came to be. But also, this says, name 3 songs that would make up the soundtrack to your life.
Oh, man. I could totally answer this. Okay, so I worked with this composer named Ludwig Göransson on Homecoming King.
Yeah.
Ludwig is a producer for sort of Childish Gambino, and he scores a lot of movies like Black Panther and tons and tons of TV shows. But one of the conversations that we had going into Homecoming King was I had put together a list of sort of beats that I really, really liked that I wanted to be the opening theme song. We were having a conversation on the phone, and some beats just weren't really working for me. And he goes, "All right, you have 2 choices. You can do, I can produce a beat for you, or I can do stuff that's more of an anthem. And anthems have melody, and you're able to sort of hum them."
Mm-hmm. Bang.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. Even my wife does it. She's like, yeah, she'll start humming it, and my daughter will start staring. And I was like, that to me seems cool.
Yeah.
Let's do that. And Ludwig is just one of those guys where you can just tell him to go and give him a sort of a soul or sample of like what does feel like a big anthem that builds. And the song that I gave him was Kanye West Power. Because that sort of, it's anthemic and it builds, right? And it was pre-Red Hat. And it's like, it really is a great anthem.
It's great. You can't take that away from him.
Yeah, but my favorite songs all time, Public Service Announcement, Jay-Z. Mo Money, Mo Problems, Notorious B.I.G. And I can't think of a third one right now. But those 2 are like my all-time, like I put them in rotation.
Awesome.
Timeless. What would you say?
For me?
Yeah, in Jim. I'd love Jim.
I don't even know. I don't think I can answer this one.
Really?
Jim's like, I saw the first episode of Narcos.
Yeah.
Didn't know what it was about. But...
3 songs.
3 songs. I love this. So this is 90 Second Why. Eric Whitacre has a song called "The Stolen Child." I love that song. It's one of my favorites. Hold on, just let me finish.
Pressure's on, man. You did it to yourself.
Still Dre. This is like live YouTube comments. Like.
My wife, everybody. That's it. This is.
Oh, this is your wife.
only like a performer creative's wife would give it to you that honest, because Bina would do the same thing with me.
Yeah.
Like if she was in the audience, she'd be like, nope. You know? Or like she'd be like, okay, all right,
Yeah.
well done.
And Can't See Me, Tupac.
Oh,
Good.
yeah.
What was that?
I'm looking at Jim now. I'm just seeing if he's gonna take it home or.
I don't know.
okay.
I can't do it. I would just let everybody down.
What would you say? Give me your three.
My 3
Yeah.
songs.
Public service announcement by Jay-Z is such a great.
It's huge.
Dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, pff, you know.
For me, it's Fuji La by the Fugees.
Oh, that's a great one. Yes.
Like turn my whole thing upside down, you know. Green Eyes by Erykah Badu.
Wow. Okay.
Good song for
All
me.
these like New Yorker songs.
I don't know. I mean, if by that you mean good.
Your third better be
and-
like.
Yeah.
That's fair.
No, but your third one has to be like Getting Jiggy With It by Will Smith.
It's like come
Yes,
down to our level.
I prefer
Return
Wild
of the
Wild.
Mac.
Yeah,
Like,
I prefer Wild Wild West, but yes. And that's enough. Thank you guys.
Thanks,
This
you
has
guys.
been awesome.
Yeah.